I just want to remind you that Dr. Shane Shelfeffer is also online here. He's able to help whenever either one of us can help any of your faculty as we go. What I want to share with you are how faculty go in and get the outcomes and connect them to whatever assignments or activities that you want to score students or collect the students' scores from on the program level for your particular program. I'd like to encourage you to ask questions right along the way. I'm going to bring up the chat. If you have a question you want to throw into chat, that'd be good. Or if you even just unmute your mic, you can simply move to that. Are you seeing this PowerPoint slide?
Yes.
Okay. Right now in your program level, these are the outcomes that are currently available. These come from the 2022 ACEJMC learning outcomes that had been provided to me. And so I believe these are the current items that you do have to collect student achievement on. So these are what is available for any faculty to be able to connect to whatever are appropriate scoring devices to identify in these particular criteria. Each of these criteria are divided into 4 levels of achievement. The top being exceeding expectations. The next one, the meeting expectations. Below that are meeting minimal expectations. In other words, it's okay, but it's not exactly what you're totally meeting your expectations. And then totally not meeting the minimum expectations for that particular criterion. So if you want different levels of achievement rather than these 4, we need to know that before we connect them to any of the assignments, because we will want to make certain that all of these align together whenever we're able to bring the information together and visualize it for you. So if we're inside of a course, and again, I said I brought this up and I created these to look like what you would see if you were in one of your courses. I couldn't go in and create it from a journalism course because I don't have access to any of the courses. So if you're in a course level, there is a button called Outcomes. So if you have a faculty member who is supposed to collect information on one or more of those criterion that are to be assessed, they would click on Outcomes, and then they would click on the button Find, because the outcomes already exist at the program level. We do want to communicate to your faculty that they should not go to the outcome. That creates an outcome in their course, and that won't do what you want it to do. So they would go to find the outcome, and when they get Find, a window will come up and they will get to journalism and mass communication and that list of I think it was 10 or 11 outcomes. So they would choose which outcome they are wanting to assess, and they would import it into their course. They can import as many of these criterion that need to be assessed in their course, as many as that are designated that they need to keep information on. The intent is you're going to find in your curriculum where are the places that the students will most appropriately demonstrate program completion competence. So in other words, not every faculty is going to be involved in data collection, and not every assignment is going to be involved in data collection, because as they move through your curriculum, some of these courses aren't at program completion level. So then that data wouldn't be able to mix together and come up with valid data for achieved program completion. So that's the thing to think about, is which courses demonstrate which of these outcomes that are designated by your accreditation agency, and then which assignment in those courses or assignments across multiple courses appropriately demonstrate program completion competence. So when they're brought into their course, in their course, they will see the list of the outcomes that they have brought into their course. It still isn't connected to an assignment yet, but it's in their course to be able to be used in a scoring device for an assignment. So once a faculty member has the appropriate criterion or outcomes that are to be assessed, they would go and connect it to an assignment. So when they click on assignments, there are several different types of assignments. So let's use this as an example. Let's say if it were as a paper, or maybe it's a presentation, or maybe it is a video of a newscast, or maybe it's a podcast that you're going to review. But if you're going to score with some type of a scoring rubric, this is the type of assignment that you would use, and you would add the scoring device, the rubric, to the bottom. So you'd click on the rubric, and when you click on rubric, a generic rubric creator is going to come up, and it looks like this. Of course, this won't be the rubric you want to use. You will have to add and take away. Let's imagine now that in your program, your program maybe creates a stock common rubric that you want everyone or several courses to bring into their course to use for scoring. You can do that by creating that on the program level. And if they click on find a rubric, they would go to the common rubrics that you might have created at the program level and simply bring it in and connect it to that assignment. And then generally their work would be done. They're ready to score. The other option is to create their own rubric that fits that particular assignment. And so then they can create whatever rubric they want for their assignment and add an outcome line into that rubric. I want to reinforce something, is that when we are collecting achievement data of outcomes, we're not taking assignment scores, because an entire assignment usually consists of multiple things that you're scoring. In other words, if it's a written assignment, there's the appropriate written language, etc. But maybe the outcome is something dealing with content, or might be dealing with cross-cultural aspects. So in other words, what we want to assess are the specific component of that assignment. So they would bring in an outcome. So if they click on outcome, find outcome, it will come up with the list of all the outcomes, and they will choose that and bring that outcome onto their scoring line. I do want you to emphasize, when people are creating a rubric, they would create the rubric, they would add their criteria, they would choose find outcome, and there would be the list of outcomes that they have brought into their course that to use. Now, again, this is just an example. These aren't your outcomes, but I had to create something to show you. Whatever they brought into their course, it will be available to use in a scoring device, in a rubric, as a rubric line. So they would choose the appropriate outcome that they want. And if you notice here that there's a checkbox saying use this criterion for scoring, the faculty has the opportunity to use this rubric as part of the assignment score that goes toward the gradebook. They also have the opportunity to uncheck this and to say, I want to score this just for the program. I don't want it to go to my score that goes to the gradebook. Either way, but that's an important thing for faculty to know, that they have the flexibility to use or not use this scoring line for the overall grade. So they'd select it, decide the criterion, and bring it into their rubric. If any outcome that is an outcome on the program level, where the score for that rubric line goes back to the program, it will have this little target. That means it's an outcome from the program level. There is a possibility that if you, as a program decides you want to make a common rubric that everyone's going to use, they could go find this entire rubric, bring it in, and then they have the flexibility to edit it in this way. If they click the little pencil, then they can eliminate any of these criteria that are in the common rubric that don't happen to fit that assignment. So there's some flexibility with that as well. When you're creating a rubric, you have an opportunity to use the entire rubric for the grade, or you have the opportunity to say, I want to score this for the program, but I don't want to use it toward the grade. So the faculty has that opportunity. They have the opportunity to remove the points from the rubric. In other words, you noticed on those rubric lines, they were 3, 2, 1, and 0. But maybe the points that go toward your grade book aren't 3, 2, 1, and 0. They're something else, 20, 15, 10, whatever. A faculty member can remove the points from the rubric and simply score the levels of achievement in each of these criteria levels, and then give the students the amount of score for each of those rubric lines that they want to give for their grade book. So there's much flexibility within that as well. So when you finish a rubric, there will probably be some lines which are to be scored for the assignment, but not part of the program assessment. If it is a program rubric line, a program outcome, it will have the target beside it, and that's how you know the difference. And of course, they have as I mentioned, they have the opportunity to use these points for the grade, or to not use these points for the grade. There's a lot of flexibility within that. Let me ask you a question before I even go into this thing. Is there anyone in your program, communications and journalism and communications, that uses selected choice examinations, multiple choice and matching and things like that? Because if there isn't, I don't have to explain this section.
Well, I don't, but I have in the past.
Okay, then I will just quickly go over this just to let you know it is possible to take a selected choice examination, multiple choice, or those type of right or wrong answer things, and to be able to select specific questions to go to specific outcome categories. Over at the right-hand side, there's 3 little buttons that people maybe don't know about. This is where all the question banks are held. So when you click on the 3 buttons, all of the questions that are in an examination, when you create a test in Canvas, they go into something called unfiled questions. And it's from these unfiled questions that your test is made up of, that you can select questions to be aligned with a particular outcome. So the way to do this is to add a question bank. And for this example, I'm going to say I added a question bank for critical thinking. Let's say that happens to be one of your outcomes. So you'd create a question bank for that. Then you'd go back into unfiled questions. And when you're in the unfiled questions, you'll open it up, and there's all of your questions that are in that folder or that test that you created. To be able to align, you'd click on this button that's called Move Multiple Questions. And what'll come up are all the questions and all of the question banks that you've created. So then you'd select which questions apply to which outcome, question bank, which is for that outcome. And then you'd select Move Questions. Now I want everyone to know that Move Questions doesn't mean it's taking it out of your test. Canvas uses the word move, but it really means align. Which questions are aligned with that? So in other words, it's going to align that in that question bank. So now we're inside of the critical thinking question bank. And to align any questions, or to be able to connect it to the outcome, you go click on Align Outcome, and a box will come up again with all these outcomes that have been brought into the course. And you select the outcome that you want to align with and click Import. And then that outcome that you have aligned it with shows up here. So now anytime the questions that you have aligned have been answered, the answer for each student for each of those questions will go back to the program. Everything goes to the gradebook as normal, but this will select which questions need to be collected for the program to identify student achievement from those examinations that are selected choice. And that's as easy as that. Then once the students answer the questions, the specific answers for the specific aligned questions go to the right category in the program. I do want to let you know that we also have outcomes for multiple assessments that have already been created and vetted through the Association for AALHE, a national organization that has created these rubrics. This one happens to be for oral communication. I know oral communication is a big thing in journalism and communication. They have already created categories with descriptions that you can use in creating your own rubrics. If you want to become more specific, looking at specific criteria to assess, it just simply makes things easier when you are creating the specific assessable criteria within, say, something like oral communication. And I can help you to show you how to take the language from these rubric lines and put them into scoring devices for you to use that become more specific in assessing student achievement. And if you look here at the left, here are all of the categories that are available with detailed rubrics like the one you just saw. What you had seen was the oral communication one. But in all of these categories, if you have outcomes, because I know you have an ethical reasoning outcome, I know you have a creative thinking outcome, I know you have an engagement outcome, you have an oral communication, you have a written communication outcome. You as a program might want to become more specific than assessing oral communication as one thing. We know that oral communication involves eye contact, posture, fluency of their speaking, the volume in which they speak, the quality of the diction. If you want to get more specific, rather than just oral communication, here's a single score, but we want to see the component scores within oral communication, I can help you, or Shane and I can help you design these criteria lines in your program level, so then faculty can bring those down into their course and provide the program scores in a much more specific way. And I'll show you the usefulness of that. When you collect all these scores out of Canvas, these are automatically pulled into a warehouse of data and filtered by your program. We will create tables for you. You don't have to do it. We will create it for you using Power BI. And in that, we can create a table of each of the overall outcomes and each of the component more specific criteria, so you can see students' achievement as scored by faculty across your program, how many students and what percentage of students are reaching what levels. We also will provide this information back to you in a graphic format. So imagine this were your 10 outcomes, these categories that you have for your outcomes. And we would put all of those scores together and give you the overall achievement percentages that fit within the categories that they have. But if you decide to go more specifically, where you want to know inside of each of these outcome groups, we also will give you the tables to be able to look at the specific criteria. In other words, if this were oral communication, you could see how students are scored in posture, and how students are scored in volume, and how students are scored in diction, etc. And that's when the assessment becomes most useful. I know that that's not what your accreditation agency is asking for, which is fine. You can give them the overall oral communication score. But when the assessment provides you as a program with the more detailed data, then it becomes more useful to individual faculty across the program to decide well, here's, for example, in this critical thinking, if I go back one slide, in critical thinking, we have 76% are meeting and exceeding expectations, which you think is just fine. You're doing really pretty well, 76%. But if you're moving forward and you're looking within that, there's one criteria that the students aren't doing so well at. And if you don't assess the individual criteria, these specific challenges get hidden in the overall summary of that outcome. So my suggestion to the program would be to look more into the very specific components of the outcomes that your accreditation agency asks for, because that's when the information will be more useful to your faculty. We also will provide a table back to your program, taking all of the criteria that you're assessing and show you what do the students find most difficult toward most easy. In other words, what are they doing not so well at, up to the point that they're doing better and better and better. That helps the program to expose areas that students across your program are finding challenges. This is an example of a general template that we provide your program. In other words, all of your outcomes and the percentages would be here in a graphic format. Also, the table of challenges. You can filter these by looking at specific ones, by clicking on them, but we also connect it to the student information system. So if you want to, first of all, you can see just in general, what is the percentage differentiation between each of these categories. But the nice thing about it is if we click on gender, say click on the male, what it'll do is filter everything else out and you'll see just the male scores compared to the female scores. So then you can see, is there a difference between any of these categories, those who transferred in compared to those who didn't transfer, or first generation compared to non-generation or first generation, or entry-level ACT scores? If any of those categories might make a difference, just by the click of a button, you can see the difference between both of those scores. Some other things we can do for you if you want to move into your assessment process is to compare students' perception of their achievement as compared to the faculty scored achievement. For example, let's imagine in your journalism, mass communication, that maybe you, in their senior year or junior year, whenever, you're asking the students how to score themselves, how much they have learned or how well they're achieving in each of these criterion categories using the same scale that the faculty are using. When we put the faculty scores together with the students' self-perception scores, if the students are perceiving that they're doing better than the faculty are actually scoring them, they will have a line going up. In other words, the students, it'll expose in which area the students are over their perception of self-achievement is higher than it actually is. In other words, they don't understand that, but they don't know. Or the other way around, if students don't feel that they have learned and they haven't accomplished, but they're being scored higher than that, that's also good to know. The goal is that you wouldn't have any of these lines up or down, that the students fully recognize the level that they're at, that doesn't always happen. And so a type of graph like this will give the program some insight into students' perception of their learning that are very difficult to attain otherwise. Now, I think you also might have internships where they go out into radio stations and TV stations or newspapers, and they do an internship, and the internship director, the person in the industry, scores them. Now we can take the scores from the faculty scores within those assessments, comparing it to the internship scores, or let's say you maybe even have a internship supervisor who's scoring them, and maybe the faculty goes out and observes them and scores them. Either way, we can compare those scores to see to what extent are the faculty scores matching the scores that are coming from the industry, and to see, is it possible that that in some categories the faculty are scoring higher than the industry is, or the other way around, or possibly to expose which areas does the industry find valuable as compared to what the faculty and the programs finds valuable. There's many different ways we can create graphs for you to expose some things from these surveys and scoring devices that aren't so easy to achieve, but provide some valuable information. And the last thing I want to bring to your attention is we can also automatically pull data out of any survey system we might have. We use Qualtrics here on campus. So we're able now, within this last year, to go directly into any survey that you have. It could be a senior survey or an alumni survey or employer survey or an internship survey, and be able to pull the scores directly out of that survey and visualize them in these same tables that we are creating from your Canvas scores. And then we're able to make those connections automatically. I've mentioned this before, that the scores from Canvas automatically populate these tables on a daily basis. The same thing can happen with Qualtrics now. So this gives you some ideas of how you could enhance your assessment processes to be able to gain more information beyond simply just creating tables to give to an accreditation agency. But the nice thing about it, many of these programs have designed these tables in the way that they need to report it to accreditation. So when you get to the time where you need to write accreditation report, you don't have to do any work. It's been accumulating and creating these tables on a daily basis, actually, or a semester basis, and all your data is already there. So that's what I wanted to show you today, are these possibilities that we can offer journalism and communication. I see Sean had mentioned I do some of my research methods exams. In those exams, we can connect those questions or those scores, not for the whole exam, but the specific questions that apply to specific outcomes, and be able to collect those from yours or anyone else's exams and be able to put them together by outcome, not by exam score, but by component scores that fit together in these categories of outcomes. Let's open this up to any questions that you might have in relationship to what we can do.
Thank you for that, Fred. Looks like Nikhil's got a question.
Fred, thank you. That was luminous. I mean, very impressive. Thank you very much. Quick question. Is it possible that this particular direct measure can take the place of our pre and post test if we tweak those variables appropriately?
You certainly could. If I'm not mistaken, and I might say something incorrect because I don't fully understand your pre and post test, but in this pre and post test, is it correct that you're asking faculty to score these outcomes before and after? Or you give a test to students and you're taking student scores? Which one is that? What is the process?
Students only.
Okay, and do these pre and post tests ask the students how well that they think that they have learned in these outcomes, or what they need to learn, or do they actually demonstrate competence in these questions?
Yeah, I believe they're almost entirely all to demonstrate competence.
Okay, so
am I right, Tom? Would you agree? Tom might know more than I do on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it would be possible that you could give this pre-test through Canvas or some type of means. It doesn't even have to be Canvas, some type of means where you collect these scores electronically, and then you give that exact whatever post-test again electronically, and then automatically put these together and show a difference graphically, either in a table or a graphic format. Yes, that could easily be done. And again, I want to suggest that you don't always have to use Canvas. When we're thinking of Canvas, I want you to think of Canvas as a data collection mechanism. We pull the data out of Canvas as a CSV file. So if you are collecting data in some type of examination technology and you can export it as a CSV file, it's the same thing as Canvas. We import the CSV files into Power BI to visualize it.
Thank you.
What other questions do we have for Fred? I've got a few questions for you, Fred, if nobody else is going to chime in. So,
Okay.
When you were talking about the SLOs and connecting those with a rubric, you mentioned that we can connect as many as we want to within a single rubric. Is your suggestion to only connect those SLOs that an instructor might list in the syllabus as ones that are being addressed by the course? Or do you suggest that there are others that get included?
I would suggest that you as a group of faculty would talk about your outcomes and decide where is the appropriate place to collect student achievement scores. And then whoever teaches that course or provides that assessment for it will look at their assessment that they're using in their course and say, my assignment assesses these three things, whether it says so in the syllabus or not. So I think the important thing to think about is we're not assessing courses, and we're not assessing assignments. We're assessing outcomes, which are component parts of courses, or they're component demonstrations in an assignment. So whether it says that in the syllabus or not, of course, you may later say that, well, we're assessing this and it doesn't say that in our syllabus, maybe it should. You know, that could be an outgrowth of this.
Okay, that makes sense. You also mentioned that we could potentially pull in a pre-made rubric, and then we could still edit that rubric that we pull in to a course.
Now, the way this could work is you have outcomes on the program level. So each outcome you think of as a separate criterion. Right now, your outcomes are, let me go back to this.
While you're finding that, let me get to my question. My question was, would you suggest that we build a master rubric that includes all SLOs so that is available to all of our faculty, and then they can just edit as they see fit?
That would be one possibility. So I just wanted to bring up these. You have 10 different outcomes or criterion that would be assessed. If you would like to do this, we could create one rubric that has all 10 of them in. A faculty then could bring down that rubric with all 10 and connect it to an assignment and simply delete the outcomes that don't apply.
Okay, that's exactly what I was getting at. So yes. And another question with that same scenario is, if we as a committee assign the different levels of scoring, say a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, is a faculty member able to adjust that? So let's say they have a 20, 15, 10, and 5 or something like that.
Okay.
Are they able to do that?
There's some limitations and there's some workarounds. What if you're in the outcomes, if you're creating, say, a 5-level scale or a 4-level scale, it's going to come down as a 4-level scale because that's what it's built at. When we think about the outcomes, we're not thinking about points. We're thinking about categories of achievement. So in other words, your highest level, one faculty may call that highest level 20 points. Another faculty may call it 50 points. Another, so in other words, we're not talking points, but it has a number to it because it's the number of the category. So when they bring it in, it has those numbers connected to it. There is a possibility then, the faculty member inside of their course, if they don't want to see those numbers, they could click the button, they could uncheck the button that says, or click the button that says remove the numbers from it. So then it's just boxes, it's categories. And the faculty member can assign whatever points they want to the assignment. Again, it doesn't collect points that you're giving toward the grade book. It collects which box you clicked on. The faculty member can give those as many points as they want. Now, I mentioned there are some challenges right now with that, is a faculty member can't go in and change a number 4 to a number 20. The workaround is remove the points and then give the amount of points into your grade book what you want to give as a faculty member, which is sort of what we do anyway. We're giving it so many points. So if there is a challenge with using this 4-level scale, I can work, or I can talk with an individual faculty, or talk with you, Tom, to know how to talk with the faculty to say, here are several options you have to make this work. Some faculty will add these lines and say, I have my rubric up here for scoring for my grade. I'm going to add the outcome rubric at the bottom, but I don't want points to connect to the grade. So in other words, you get rid of those point values and it just won't add up, that rubric line. You're scoring it for the program, but not for the grade. That's another possibility. So there's not one answer to that. There are multiple ways to make it work for a faculty member.
Okay.
And everyone can do it a little bit different. You don't have to have everyone doing it exactly the same.
Okay. My next question, I think, is a short answer. The outcomes that you had addressed that we can filter in different ways. Are those filtered in Canvas or are those filtered in Power BI?
Power BI. Canvas is only a data collection mechanism. There is no analysis in Canvas. It's simply a mechanism to collect the scores from the outcomes.
Okay, excellent. Does anyone else have additional questions? All right. Fred and Shane, who's been silent, but thank you both very much for this. This has been very informative. One last question real quickly, since we are recording this, would you mind, Fred, if we put this on like a YouTube channel that we have for our department and made that available to our faculty?
Absolutely. And we can do that. And if there is a reason that you need me to create individual videos to do just this little piece, we can create that too. Because I think you saw I created that for engineering using engineering outcomes. I mean, we could do something very similar. If your faculty says, I want instructions on how to do just this little part, we can make little 3 to 4 minute videos on each component. Whatever you need, we will help your